Of course.
Time for you to introduce.
Absolutely.
Hey there, welcome to another episode of More on That Later. I'm your host, Justine, and today's guest is Jayvee the Twin. And we're super excited to be talking about post-uni life, career aspirations, and who our inspirations were, and also facing our fear of interviews. Kumusta, Kuya Jayvee?
I'm good there. I have no idea what to expect on this show. Good start.
All right, I'm going to just deep dive in here, okay? What keeps you motivated? I'm kidding. Let's ease into it. Easy question first. Who is your favorite Blackpink member?
Easy question. Easily Rose. She's the greatest singer. I think she carries all the songs and makes all the songs super enjoyable. And it's just such a pleasure to listen to. So it's just Rose, hands down.
She's very talented. She plays the piano, the guitar, she draws, she composes and sings and speaks 3 languages. You went to the Blackpink concert, was it 2020 or 2019?
I think 2019.
What did you enjoy most about the concert?
Well, the most enjoyable part would be being within 5 meters of the members, which leads me to the most unenjoyable part, which was queuing up for 10 hours outside the arena. So me and 3 other friends, we lined up at 9 a.m. when the concert entry was at 5 p.m. And the concert was at 7. And we're just like, why not? It's like the only opportunity we'll get. So just go all out. And I have memorable videos. I have upfront videos of the performances, and I just look back on them every now and then, and I'm glad that I did.
I went as well, but we were in the seated area, and while you were standing a few people behind the actual stage.
Yeah, I think Rose looked at me. I think I even got better viewing angles than some of the VIP members. So, all worth it.
Yeah. So what's keeping you entertained in lockdown? I know for a fact that you got a new addition to the family earlier this year. Do you want to talk about Keo a bit?
Of course. Little puppy Keo is a cavoodle. This is Keo.
Oh my
My
gosh.
puppy.
So cute.
This is what he looked like in January when we got him this year. Most adorable little boy. Very petty, very, very spoiled.
Absolutely adorable. And you mentioned before in one of our chats that your mom knits a lot of jumpers for your dog, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have a picture of the knitwear my mom made for the dog.
Yeah.
It's funny because my mom was very skeptical at the start and didn't want a dog.
Yeah. Now that you've graduated from uni with a Bachelor of Medical Science along with an honors year, and you also sat the GAMSAT, which is an admission test for med school this year. Very competitive. Congrats. So now, what are you up to these days?
What I'm up to these days is, in terms of career, is waiting for a medical interview. I've submitted my GAMSAT marks, my GPA, and for some universities, my portfolio for medical studies. And that was due in June. And I'm waiting to see whether they'd consider me for a medical interview in October, November this year. So preparing for that is mainly what I've been doing. It's very self-directed, so it's hard to find motivation. It's also a long time period of just waiting and uncertainty and feeling like you're not the strongest candidate, so you won't be offered interviews. It's just uncertain, I guess, these times.
I can definitely relate to that. Not in the I'm applying for med school way, but feeling that you might not be the best candidate because there's a lot of other people who's done so many other things that you couldn't have imagined yourself doing even. Can I ask? I'm not sure if this is too personal a question, but how many times did you sit the GAMSAT?
I'm definitely not ashamed to answer this. GAMSAT is very rarely done once and successfully. In fact, the average candidate sits at 2.8 times. I'm not ashamed to say that I've sat it 5 times, trying over and over to get a good mark. And it just reflects on my persistence, I guess. So I look at that in that way, rather than a waste of time and a waste of money.
all your efforts are going to something really, I think, greater than ourselves. You mentioned a bit about how it's hard to keep motivated to prepare for interviews. With GAMSAT, you did it 5 times. How did you keep yourself motivated to keep doing the GAMSAT, to keep trying?
Good question. I'd say the environment that I was in really drove me. Studying medical science and making a lot of lifelong friends out of it, having friends prepare a lot for the GAMSAT as well, and push each other and constantly motivate each other and encourage each other, offer study sessions, offer advice. It really pushed me to know that I wasn't alone in this hurdle and combined effort. Just so many people pushed me along the way, made the struggle seem common and make it feel like I'm not alone in the pathway. Also, just wanting to become better every day. Like, I challenge myself to only go to sleep when I'm better than the person who just woke up. When I'm a bit more smarter, when I read a bit better, when I know how to write better, and just on that daily goal and just following every day and just tackling all these goals every day just ended up building up.
Studying something as hard as medical science and any science or anything, actually anything at uni is hard. We just have different experiences, I guess. It's really important to keep making friends and making those connections, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who's going to be helping us the most during our uni experience and even career experience, right?
I feel like friends just make the experience go so much more smoothly. You just never feel alone sometimes. You're always in company, you're always talking about things you have in common. It just makes the uni calendar go so much faster and that much more enjoyable.
Yeah. 100%. So while you were studying, you were also working as a casual in a retailer. How did you manage to balance your studies, your social life, as well as your working life?
My social life definitely plummeted a bit. Wasn't getting invited to a lot of events, a lot of parties, a lot of nights out, a lot of volleyball, just in order to stay on top of uni and work. But in terms of balancing uni and work, my supervisor told me something very important to me. And my supervisor told me, what do you want long term? And where do you want to be in 2, 3, or even 5 years' time? And that really, really provoked how I was taking on like the balance of uni and work. I believe that like I wasn't going to be in the same retail job the next 2 to 5 years. I realized that wasn't my priority and that wasn't what I should keep doing and prioritizing over my uni work, because my uni work is ultimately what would carry me through my career goals in the next 2 to 5 years.
I guess it's really important to find that balance between uni, friends, and working life, but it really all comes down to priorities. And for you, it's your uni goals and your career goals as well, right?
Yes, it's my long-term goals.
You probably get asked this all the time, but why did you want to be a doctor?
I thought of a lot of different career options, like real estate was one of them. An accountant was one of them too, because my math teacher was an ex-accountant and my high school math teacher is just super memorable and I learned a lot.
That's awesome. Were you good at maths?
I think I did pretty good in year 12.
You did 4U?
Yeah, I did.
Jeez.
And I think why I wanted to become a doctor is like at a very young age, around the time I could barely remember. I just remember going to the Philippines a lot. I didn't have much of a memory of my mum's side of grandparents. That's because ill health caught them around the time I was very young and I couldn't remember. And ill health took them away from me. So I wasn't able to make those memories with them. And I'm only left with photos, not even of us together, but just them. And then my visit to the Philippines kind of went to a realization that health and healthcare was super important, especially in developing countries. And like they take away elderly too soon. A lot of people suffer all different health problems. Coming back from the Philippines, my cousin came over, aspiring doctor as well. He came over and in fact he studied the GAMSAT as well. And he raised me for a while my parents were busy at work. Like my parents were super stressed and busy about work. My cousin was no different because he was busy about studying GAMSAT so he could study medicine in Australia. But he'd teach me things that at a young age I could understand about the things he was learning. For example, he'd teach me about my lips being a very sensitive organ to temperature. And that's why we put our lip against like a thermometer when we're cooking or even like a hot bowl. He taught me about different reactions I'd have. Like he'd like squeeze my forearm and tell me to tense it over and over. And you could see that blood was like accumulating in one spot and it was feeling warm and pins and needles. It was explaining things about myself in a way that I could understand from a young age. And I think that really hooked me on to learning about what he was learning. So I think that really set the path for me to try to do the same.
That's awesome. He's basically a walking Wikipedia, but for kids.
Yeah, like my cousin now is working big time in American Samoa as an emergency physician. So
Wow.
like super inspiring.
Are you still pretty close with him? Catch
At the
up every
moment,
now and then?
no, not really. We don't chat now and then. I'd love to surprise him one day and let him know that I'm studying as well. Like
Yeah.
I'm studying what he'd be studying. Like that'd be a call I'm looking forward to, but I just need to get to that stage first.
Nearly there, nearly there. You've done your undergrad, you've done GAMSAT, you're waiting on the interview now, which leads me to my next question. Apart from excellent academic and GAMSAT results, you also mentioned that you have to do an interview to get into med school. How are you preparing for this? I know how nerve-wracking interviews are, and this is exactly the reason why I wanted to start a podcast like this, interviewing friends and being comfortable being interviewed. Yeah, for you, how are you preparing for your med school interview?
Various different ways. I myself have been attempting job interviews as well. Some of them going for 45 minutes or even longer, just talking about myself and how I'm fit for the job. I think a lot of the feedback I get from them is super constructive. For example, just learning things in my own time. I didn't know that coding is important for some of the jobs I was applying for, like some of the research jobs I was applying for. And just like managing a lot of students is also a thing that's super sought out for from employers, like supervising students and whatnot. I've failed all my job interviews as well. Unfortunately.
Like I said, it's good LinkedIn stories.
Yes. It'll make a grand story in the future.
Exactly.
A lot of the feedback I get is that I don't have enough experience for the jobs I'm applying for, and that this job would be better suited for someone with more experience. It makes me think, like, if you read my CV and then proceeded to put me into an interview stage, like, shouldn't you have decided that I was well suited enough and experienced for the job? This just teaches me to keep going. One of the advice that one of my role models was giving out was be like a kid. It doesn't mean like start kicking and punching and start complaining. It just means always be in that mode that you're always asking questions, that you're always questioning why things are the way they are. Pester the people who know. Always be in that young mindset that you're not sure until you ask and until you see it and believe it yourself. In terms of prepping for medical interviews, there's a lot of different theories of ethics and medical practices to wrap my head around. There's like plenty of things about confidentiality, bioethics, palliative care, for example, rural public health, Indigenous health. There's so many concepts to wrap your head around. So just reading a lot of stimulus on that. If reading's not your thing, watching documentaries are also very thought-inducing. And practicing questions one-on-one with friends has been the most helpful, because in a medical interview, you need to respond for like 8 minutes. And you need to respond to like 8 different questions of 8 minutes each. So
wow.
It's tough. And you've got to be firm on your stance on a lot of these topics throughout all 8 minutes, if you take 8 minutes. And just one-on-one practice has been the most maturing in terms of these interview questions and preparing for the interview.
Next question. I got this from a med school interview website. What will you do if you're not accepted to med school this year?
So I feel like I've definitely thought about this, because if not this year, there's always the next year. I'm going to try even harder next year. I'm going to try build up my experiences and be an even better candidate for next year. And I know what preparing is like from this year. So full steam ahead next year. If I don't get in, I'm going to try even harder. I'm going to push my limits. I'm going to build my experiences. I'm going to have lots to talk about. I'm going to be good for interviews. I'm going to get a better GAMSAT mark. I might even start a master's next year. If I don't get in this year, I most likely will be starting a master's next year at UNSW. I don't know who will still be there.
Master's in what area of study?
So master's of public health. There's a lot of different disciplines and majors to get into. Given my pathology background, I'm interested in the infectious disease intelligence one.
I wanted to ask about your honors project. You mentioned you worked with viruses and certain diseases in the lab. What was your honors project, and what was it like doing honors in the School of MedSci?
So this is where I spent my honors year at the Children's Cancer Institute, studying various different aggressive forms of leukemia and finding treatments for them. So my project was about finding this tumor suppressor gene, identifying its gene network through single cell RNA sequencing, just to see how it's related to other genes of interest. And from our understanding of those genes listed, find an effective treatment for this aggressive form of leukemia. And so, yeah, we managed to do all of that within my honors year. It was a truly hectic year. In fact, I was privileged enough to become a multiple time author for a lot of the discoveries and a lot of the research that our lab team was doing. It's definitely rewarding. Like, it's something you can add to your CV and talk about in the future seamlessly. And this reflects on a lot of difficult work.
Yeah. Especially work in cancer. I know the body itself is a very complicated system. And so cancer is in of itself a very complicated disease, not only affected by one factor, but affected by so many factors throughout the whole system, right? And to work on something like that for your honors, that is pretty amazing. That's fantastic.
Cancer is such a difficult field. There's so many different exceptions. Cancers of each organ are like different. Like skin cancer is so much more different to stomach cancer, for example. Just completely different in physiology, appearance, how it affects the body. It's such a giant web of things that have yet to be discovered. And that's why a lot of the honors projects and a lot of research that is undertaken currently is just on cancer topics. It's still very poorly understood, even though there's so much funding and research going into it.
In traditional job interview fashion, where do you see yourself in 10 years' time? What is 30-plus-year-old Jayvee doing?
I can be hopeful about where I'll be in 10 years.
Yeah.
Hope to be in the Medical Board of Australia as a health practitioner, completing all my studies and my internships and my registrar examination and everything. Who knows, maybe settle down with my dog, going for walks, seeing a lot more of the world, traveling a lot more, playing sport, hopefully. I hope I'll be fit in the next 10 years.
Playing volleyball?
I love volleyball. Yes. Hopefully I can continue that in the next 10 years. Oh, wait, Justine. The bear you gave me.
Oh, how cute. Oh, we couldn't.
And I drink out of the mug you gave me as well.
Oh, really? So sweet.
Yeah. Yay. Thanks for that, though.
You're welcome.
Couldn't do the same, though.
It's all good. We'll catch up soon again. Yeah. we took a while choosing the gifts because we're like, but what if he doesn't use this, or what if he doesn't like it? And then we're like, okay, we'll go with the mug because it's practical.
This isn't exactly my team, but these are the boys.
One last question. What is the best piece of advice that you've ever received? You've given some advice here and there from different mentors and role models, but what do you think is the best advice you've ever gotten?
3 words of advice that have stuck onto me, and I constantly think about it. Word for word, it was use your coconut.
What?
How did that stick onto me? I think what it really meant is, like, if we don't have it, use your brain. Think about alternatives. Think about what could be used instead. you either have like a dense head where you give up, or you are constantly in that state of mind where you want to critically think outside the box, look for different avenues. How about like take a step back and look for a different viewpoint of things? I guess
Yeah.
it sort of coincides with that be like a kid advice.
Yeah, so that ends our podcast. I hope you had as much fun as I did. Kamsahamnida. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in.
Hit that subscribe, hit that bell button. Thank you for the page.